There's a question deep inside. Will you guide me through the night? Will you calm the storms of my life? All these walls are built to comfortable, and the world outside is loud. When the voice I trust is fear and doubt, I don't need your guidance now. All my walls and my defenses fall to the ground. When the warmth of your light shines all around, your love is better than all the world can give. Your love is better than all the world can give. Will you save me from this emptiness? Will you lead me into peace? Will you
Well, good morning. Oh, we good? Check 1, 2. Check. Well, good morning. How we doing, y'all? You guys good? Can you guys hear me on this mic? Nope. All right. Well, see what we can make happen here in just a second. There we go. Hello. Check 1, 2. Check. Nothing. How about now? No. I need a different microphone stand. Give me. How about that? Check 1, 2. All right, can you guys hear me now? Yeah, you guys hear out there? No? We can hear in our ears. Hey, David. All right, there we go. How we doing, y'all? Everybody's good this morning? Would you guys stand with me? And with the consideration of us, enjoying a beautiful march this afternoon, we wanted to do our best to not only play some songs that are uplifting and fun. We wanted to give you enough time to get some lunch in your belly, get rolling, get out there. So today might feel a little bit shorter than normal, and I'm gonna definitely need your help because it's 3 of us up here. We don't got a full drummer or anything. It's just my foot. So if you're willing and you're able, would you guys stand? Would you sing with us? Would you clap with us? And let's celebrate today. Is that cool with you? Come on, is that cool with you? Oh, rising above the dust. Oh, rising above the dust. Oh, rising above the dust. Oh,
In the wake of every heartache, in the depth of every fear, there were diamonds, diamonds, waiting to break out of here. Don't you think I hear the whispers, the subtle lies, those angry pleas? They're just demons, demons, wishing they were free like me. With a fire from the sun, with a light when the day is done, we are brave, the chosen ones. With the diamonds, diamonds, rising above the dust. Oh, rising above the dust. Oh, rising above the dust. Oh, rising above the dust.
all your curses will surrender. Every damning word will kneel. There's just mountains, mountains about to turn into fields. Come on, sing it out. With a fire. With a fire from the sun. With a light when the day is done. We are the brave, the chosen ones. With the diamonds, diamonds, rising above the dust. Oh, 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 rising, 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 rise. Oh, you've taken down so many others. Oh, but you'll know my name when you see it. And in these ashes, I'm stronger still. You'll learn to fear my pain, yeah, you will. You've taken down so many others. Oh, but you'll know my name when you see it. And in these ashes, I'm stronger still. You'll learn to fear my pain, yeah, you will. You'll learn to fear my pain, yeah, you will. You will, you will. With a fire from the sun, with a light when the day is done. We are the brave, we're the chosen ones. We're the diamonds, diamonds. We're the diamonds, diamonds. Yeah. We're the diamonds, diamonds. We're the diamonds, diamonds. Rising above the dust. Oh, 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 rising. I can't hear you. Come on. Oh, rising above. Oh, rising above the dust. Oh, yeah. And come now, fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy praise. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious song, sung by flaming tongues above. Place thy mountain, fix upon me, mount of thy redeeming love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from interposes precious love. Yeah. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. Just want to hang out there for a second. Yeah, I think all too often we ignore the things that we arrive with. We ignore the fact that there's a wrestling match that is necessary in our own hearts. That before we arrive at understanding what this life is all about, before we arrive at any firmer understanding as to whether the divine is with us or not, we got to believe in what this book we kind of listen to, people that we've been listening to at Watershed, the truths that have been brought to our table. We kind of have to listen to those and be able to wrestle with ourselves first. And I love this verse that we just sang. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. It's not about us owing God anything. It's about him feeling, about our God feeling like we're so valuable, we're so important. The problems that we have are so important that he's willing to be with us. And that in of itself is the thing that I bind my heart to day in and day out. That his presence is with us, whether I know it or not, whether I'm into it or not, and that my value is instantly elevated because of it. That I was valuable before, I was valuable whenever I was doing all the hood stuff I was doing, whatever that might have looked like. And that I was valuable the second before I made a decision to change or walk in a different direction. And that I am even more valuable now, not because of my decision, but because I've realized how important I am in this kingdom. And so, wherever it is that you are, whatever you came in with, whatever is devaluing you today, attach your heart to this. That whether you're prone to wander, you can hand over your heart, and it is a safe place. That it's sealed, that it's ready, that it's been loved, that it's truly, truly welcomed into the kingdom. So let's sing this again, and wherever you're at, whether you're feel like you believe that or you don't, let's just sing it into fruition today for each other. Let's sing it into fruition for ourselves, whatever that looks like. If you're willing and able, lift up your song, lift up your voice, lift up your hands, and sing it together. Come on, oh to grace.
And oh to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. But here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Oh, 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 it's prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. And here's this heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in. Yeah, I'm thankful for the fact that after I find out that my worthiness is not in some type of extreme sacrifice, that my worthiness isn't in me making a decision that when I pivot, that's when my name starts holding weight. I'm thankful for the fact that love is the greatest argument. I'm thankful that there's nothing better. There's no greater weapon, there's no greater tool, there's no greater argument, there's no greater thing than love. And that I was loved when I was born. I was loved before that there's been libraries worth written about our hearts and how much we are loved. And so when you sing this song, it's the pivoting point. It's not anything else than that. It's a choice to say that fear, injustice, all things that are evil, all things that bring me depression, the things that make me feel unchecked, like my world is crumbling apart, all of that can be held up, can be removed, can be given me a new perspective simply by expressing love. So let's sing this together from the front to the back. Sing it as loud as you can. Come on. Yeah, oh, my fear doesn't stand a chance when I say, come on, my fear doesn't stand a chance when I set in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I set in your love. Sing it out. When darkness tries to roll over my bones, when sorrow comes to steal the joy I own, when brokenness and pain is all I know, I won't be shaken. I won't be shaken. Come on, you know it. Sing it out. Yeah, my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Yeah. Come on, sing it out. Shame no longer. Shame no longer has a place to hide. Oh, I'm not a captive. I am not a captive to lie. I'm standing against my fear. I'm not afraid to leave my past behind. Yeah. I won't be shaken. Come on. I won't be shaken. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Oh, my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. There's power that can break off every chain, every single chain. There's power that can empty out the grave. Yes, it can. There's resurrection power that can save. There's power in your name. Power in your name. There's power. Yeah, there's power that can break off every chain. Yeah, yeah. There's power that can empty out the grave. Yeah, there's resurrection power that can save. Come on. There's power in your name. Power in your name. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Yeah, my fear doesn't stand a chance when I. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Yeah. Oh, I'm standing in your love. Yeah, I'm standing in your love. Yeah. Oh, I'm standing in your love.
Good morning. You can be seated. My name is Matt, and I'm the lead pastor here at Watershed. Thank you. One person. That's awesome. And it wasn't, but at least it wasn't my wife, right? That's good. I just realized how many of you grew up in church choir after that? Because it's like if we ever wanted to do, I'm not fishing for this, but if we ever want to do a Watershed choir, we've got some voices in the crowd. So give yourselves a nice round of applause. That was really awesome. A couple of things here. We got something going on after this. I don't know. Does anybody know what that is? Yeah, Pride Parade is right after this. As soon as we get done here, grab some lunch, and I think it's Montford Point is the street that we need to meet on, probably around 12:30, 12:45. Now, for those of you who have walked in Pride in the past, you know, last year we were like almost at the very end, like the street cleaners were behind us as we were moving forward. We have been moved up in the order in the rotation. So I don't know if that's because we're more important or not. Bottom line, though, if you wait, if you're like, well, it took us an hour last year, you might miss it. So you want to get down there a little bit early. It starts at 1, so anything around the 12:30, 12:45 mark, I think would be a good idea. Also, there is an after party at the official brewery of Watershed, Petty Thieves, so come out to that if you want to. And then also, we've been working with an organization called Heart Math Tutoring. I've lost track how many years they've been a part of who we are as the school year starts, and their whole mission is to try to resource under-resourced students in the area of math. And the way they do this is they create tutoring opportunities throughout the entire greater Charlotte area. We love it because our community is spread out over the greater Charlotte area. And so if you're interested in having a real impact in a 3rd to 4th grader's life, particularly in the area of math, there are both in-person and Zoom opportunities for you to do this. I think we have about 4 folks signed up to tutor through this program. Ideally, we'd like to add 4 more, maybe get to the 10 mark. But again, if you follow what's on the screen, you should be able to know how to sign up for that. Also, Austin Smith is not here this morning, so I'm going to say this out loud, and hopefully he knows it sort of, but next weekend we're going to spend some time at the end of the morning really celebrating him. If you're familiar with kind of what's been evolving over the last 8 months, Austin, who's been here for a long time, who's been one of the key worship pastors here, music pastors here at Watershed, he has been migrating into another career lane. He's not going anywhere. He's going to continue to be involved at various levels, but we want to take a morning and just mark the moment and say thank you to him. And so if you're around next weekend, please make sure you're here for that. Also, if you're brand new and you've been wondering what's the best first step to jump into Watershed, it's actually something called Preface. And we're going to talk more about the Preface in the next couple of weekends, but you can go ahead and sign up. I think it's the second week of September, right after, not the week of Labor Day, but the week after that we're going to get started. It's I think it's 4 Tuesdays or Wednesday nights. I'm not sure what the date is, but you can see it when you follow the link. But then, even more important, next Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m., our regional collectives return. And so if you're new, you kind of have 2 opportunities, like really fast, to get to know folks. Regional collectives are these social gatherings that are in different parts of the city because folks drive from all over the place to be here on a Sunday morning. And so you can sign up for that this morning. And if you're a part of regional collectives and you haven't, haven't RSVP'd, please do that so that our host families and our liaisons have an idea of how many folks are coming. Oh, one more thing. I forgot to mention this when it comes to Pride. There are T-shirts in the lobby still for sale, still for the parade today, and some of you bought T-shirts and you haven't picked them up. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Finally, this place is fueled by your activity, your participation, your story, and also your generosity. Over this summer, we have really reclaimed a ton of financial ground here as a community. For the first time in a long time, it feels like more big arrows are pointing in the right direction, and we still have some work to do. And so if you've been thinking about what the opportunity is for your finances, your resources, your dollars to begin going to work and investing in Watershed, there's secure ways to do that. If you follow the QR codes, hopefully. Well, it's not up there right now. If you go to the Watershed app, there's ways of doing that. And then also, there's giving boxes in the back. But there we go. Thank you. Everything is secure online. There's also matching opportunities for various organizations here in Charlotte. Wells Fargo, B of A, I think, matches what we do here. And the mission of this community, whether that's Heart Math Tutoring or Greenhouse or some of our international partner, the ongoing resistance of injustice to the world, animating hope here. That's what your dollars feel here at Watershed. And so it's never too soon to jump into that, and would welcome anyone that's willing to do so. Finally, thank you for being here. And I know you just sat down, but I'm going to ask you to do something for just a moment. I'm going to ask you to stand up and greet someone next to you. Elbow bump, fist bump, high five, hug. You guys figure all that out. Thank you for being here this morning. Stand up and welcome one another, please.
Every tree must find its place in the sun. Without sunlight, neither a tree nor any green plant grows.
How does it grow?
Step there. Well, good morning. My name is David Roberts, and if you're newer to Watershed, but maybe grew up in a church context, you know that the big Sundays, the Sundays that we kind of make a whole to-do about, are typically Christmas Eve and Easter. And that's kind of true here. We like those. But for us, Pride Sunday is kind of our Super Bowl. Not necessarily attendance-wise. In fact, a huge portion of our community, of our congregation, is actually already over in Uptown getting ready for the parade. So if anything, our numbers are probably down a little bit relative to normal. But just the build-up and the planning that goes into it, as much as any other part of our year. And when you have a teaching team where you rotate and take turns, different folks, there's about 6 or 7 of us who share the teaching, preaching duties here at Watershed. Getting to land on Pride Weekend is kind of a big deal. It happened to be that I was the only person available, but I'm going to claim it. I'm going to enjoy it. And just to give you a little sense of where we're going this morning, I don't want to belabor our time together. Hopefully most of us are going to be heading over to the parade at some point. Got to get fed. I've told a few folks who asked how I was coming in, I am preemptively overstimulated. I feel that a little bit every Sunday, but it's just to the nth degree between the crowds, the heat, and two of my least favorite things in the world that I have to navigate, traffic and parking. I am someone who very readily just, whatever it costs, I don't care, just give me the simplest, easiest parking garage. So all I want to do this morning is this is week 2 of our series, The Myth of Normal, and I just want to riff a little bit about this concept of normality or what is normative, poke holes in a few maybe taken for granted ideas that many of us might have when it comes to what constitutes normal, read a little bit of the Bible, and then send us on our merry way. So that's what I'm going to do. Now you know. So if you missed last week, the gist of this series is that there is a often taken for granted assumption or set of assumptions when it comes to what is normal. There are elements of this that are nature, there are elements of this that are nurture. Many of these things are ingrained in us, not even intentionally. Like if you've heard the phrase, more is caught than taught, many of these things we just sort of pick up on, almost copying other folks in our society who we understand to be doing the right or normal thing. And oftentimes, without us even realizing that we're getting sucked into this, we get pulled into expectations, routines, systems that, even if well-intentioned, can be marginalizing for folks who, for whatever reason, don't fit into this definition of normal. In many ways, everything about today, everything about this weekend, everything about the celebrations that many of us are going to take part of this afternoon are a response, a kind of resistance to these assumptions of normativity, of normality, of things like that. And I think that's really relevant, not just because of what we're talking about today, but anyone who has been following the local news this week knows that there are folks in our legislature, folks in our state, who maybe think that they're trying to do something good and right and true, but are making it harder for those of us who show up to these expectations of normality differently, harder to live, harder to feel safe, to be free. And so, I don't know, this we didn't know a lot of that was going to happen when we planned this series 6 months ago, but there's a sort of providence or serendipity to its timing. And one of the ways I think that these notions of normativity get sort of codified, get established, get defended, is oftentimes we do these 2 subtle things. The first thing we do is we equate normal with good in a very binary sense. And so there's this notion of normativity or normality. It must be good, and therefore any deviation from what is considered normal is somehow bad or wrong or impure. That's the first move. The second move that we often do in sort of support of the first is we equate what is natural with what is normal. So therefore, if we can prove that something is natural, if it is according to the way that nature sort of functions on its own, or more often, what is natural is designed by God in some sense, and so therefore what is natural is also good because it's normal and because it's God's design. And well, there's lots of reasons to poke holes in that. I'm going to get to some biblical ones in a second, but even before getting, if we're looking at this purely from like a secular standpoint, you can look at any number of schools of thought, like areas of like academic study, and poke holes in this assumption of normal is good, natural is normal, therefore natural is good. It's rife with contradiction. One example that I'm particularly fond of in the field of psychoanalysis, which if you're looking for a secular support to what I'm saying, it doesn't get much more secular, at least historically speaking, than the field of psychoanalysis. But within this field, the whole idea, this is where we get the idea of having an unconscious, like, you know, you have your conscious self, your ego, and then you have these unconscious elements of you. The whole notion to oversimplify, drastically to oversimplify, around the idea of having an unconscious is that there is a part of you that doesn't cleanly fit into the category of natural versus unnatural, and it is acting on your behalf, sometimes against your behalf, but it is acting in a way that makes it almost impossible for you to cleanly and comfortably categorize your decisions, your actions, your relationships into these categories of natural. If anything, and you know, Freud would be rolling in his grave to hear me say this, more power to him, but the field of psychoanalysis makes a strong contention that there is something core in our being as humans that is in fact supernatural. And that's kind of where I want to transition into what the Bible says about this. So there are any number of passages that get appealed to biblically to make a case for what is normative by way of what is natural. And sorry, I just saw this here. And that often gets marshaled or kind of utilized in relation to conversations around gender and sexuality. And then we get into this weird dance. So people advocating for what I might call a more traditional or conservative position will point to certain passages of Scripture to say, you know, this is how God designed it, it must be so, you know, and then they'll point to nature, like literally like the natural world, and kind of say, you know, this, then that, and, you know, whatever. And then almost taking for granted the validity of that argument, folks who are advocating for what I might call a more inclusive or progressive position will just take for granted that that is the battlefield that we need to win. If we can't win the natural normative battle, then we're going to lose. So the case is made to like try to say that what is actually natural, and therefore what is actually normal, and therefore what is actually good, is exactly the opposite of what the conservative or traditional position says. Has anyone experienced this or kind of been a part of this, perhaps around the Thanksgiving table? It's always Thanksgiving that we imagine that we're talking to our friends and relatives who disagree with us. But the point is, and you know, I've been part of this. You know, there's been conversation around this even within, you know, leadership and kind of teaching stuff here. Is it's this subtle. I'm going to call it falsehood that we get caught into, that we have to defend something on the grounds of it being natural in order for it to be justified, completely forgetting the fact that in both the secular sense that I outlined one example of, but also in the biblical sense, from the very beginning, we are described as super, above, beyond what is natural. And to make my point, I actually want to go literally to the very beginning. First verse in the entire Bible, Genesis 1:1. So what is up on the screen is a translation that is rigidly literalistic. Because I'm going to read this passage, and all of you, I'm venturing to guess, have heard it before, but it looks a little different. Some of you are probably already looking at it up on the screen. It maybe reads a little bit different than probably the NIV version that you're used to. And I'm just going to read it, and then we'll talk about it. So it says, "When God began to create the heavens and the earth was complete chaos, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters." All right, a little different than in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. What you need to know about the Hebrew tradition, the rabbinic tradition, is that oftentimes the truth of a passage is not found in the text, but in the contradictions that the text raises, and then can be debated, argued over, you know, hemmed and hawed over. And so I'm not sitting here trying to correct your NIV reading of this passage, but simply to point out that in the long history of interpreting the Hebrew Bible, what we call the Old Testament, this is a passage that has been debated, because latent in the most literal reading of the text is this question: wait a second. Before God started creating, was there literally nothing? Or is the simplest and most straightforward wording of this text that there was already something existing that was existing in this state of chaos that God began to bring a kind of sense of order or direction to? So that's the first sort of curiosity that gets raised by looking at it in a really rigidly literalistic fashion. And then, of course, the other piece, in most translations that we are all familiar with, the word wind is the word spirit, and that word is pretty interchangeable in the Hebrew text. And the idea, basically, is that there is this almost force, this spirit that is emerging above and kind of through this chaos. And there's a kind of unpredictability to it, a sense of possibility to it. Now, I did think about spending all of our time here in Genesis because there's other passages that are very, very relevant to this conversation. Just this week, I was talking with my mother-in-law, who was reading a study from a rabbinic scholar about a little bit later in Genesis 1 when it's talking about the creation of humans. And it talks about the fact that, God made them male and female. And one of the things that rabbinic scholars have noted for centuries is that the way that this is worded, the whole male and female thing, it's not a binary, it's a both. In the original context, the simplest, most direct way to read this passage is that the original human, the word Adam literally just means like earthling, like made from the earth. It's not a male name, at least originally. This earthling is sort of both. It encompasses the potentiality of all genders, and there are actually historical senses within the Hebrew culture and Hebrew tradition where it held the potentiality for 6 different gender expressions. So sorry to disappoint, that's actually not where I want to camp this morning. Even though I know that's really, really interesting. I can send you a cool little summary of it later if you want. But back with this first passage in Genesis, it mirrors, the way that it's worded here, it mirrors something else that Jesus made reference to in the book of John. And so I want to draw a connection between these two passages. So this next passage, book of John, just some context for those who might be unfamiliar. At this point, Jesus has been doing his ministry, and one of the religious leaders, Nicodemus, many of you are probably familiar with this. This is the passage, the conversation where we get the most famous verse in the Bible, John 3:16. And Nicodemus is coming to Jesus under the cover of night, and he's got a problem. On the one hand, they see clearly God is with Jesus. He's performing signs, he's performing these wonders, but he's trying to make sense of it in light of what he understands, his particular corner of Judaism's interpretation of the Hebrew Scriptures. And so he's trying to make sense of it, trying to square what he feels is a bit of a circle. And, so that's the setup. And so Jesus answers his opening salvo of questions. He says, "Very truly I tell you, no one can enter the kingdom of God without being born of water and spirit. What is born of flesh is flesh, and what is born of spirit is spirit. Do not be astonished that I said to you, you must be born from above. The wind blows where it chooses, and you hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit." So remember, in the original, very first verse of the Bible, we are given this chaos of creation. The waters of creation are chaotic, and there's this wind or this spirit in some translations that is either hovering over or existing within the chaos of creation. The chaos of what is natural. See, we start out with what is natural, and what is natural is not normative. Rather, what is natural is open. Almost imagine a kind of stage that's been cleared, and you don't know what is going to be performed on that stage. There is a sense of possibility latent within the chaos of what is natural. And in the context of this passage in John, that's a little bit what Jesus is pushing back against. Now, really quick aside. the book of John, written probably late in the 1st century, maybe early 2nd century. By that time, Jerusalem and the temple have been destroyed. The Jewish people have been scattered. There is what we have come to call the Jewish diaspora that is forming all over the Roman Empire at this point. And within the context that this was written, this was Christ-following communities, both Jew and Gentile. Many of these folks still very much wanting to identify with the historic Jewish faith. But now no longer do they have a temple to ground them, but because of conflicts with other factions of Judaism, because there's literally never ever been, at any point in history, there's never been a single uniform normative Christianity. That's also true of Judaism, okay? So the Christ followers, who maybe were beginning to be referred to as Christians at this point, not only have they lost the Jewish temple, but increasingly coming into conflict with other factions of Judaism. And so the book of John in many ways is thought to be a response to try to create a new sense of groundedness for them. As a result, there are times when what is emphasized or emphasized, kind of centered, is Jesus' pushback or conflict with other factions of Judaism. Fast forward a couple thousand years, unfortunately, and without having that context, passages in John or Luke or other parts of the Bible have been used to create this sort of binary dichotomy between the Jewish faith and the Christian faith, with horrific consequences, as I think all of us know. I just want to give that context because I don't want to pit Jesus against Judaism here, okay? What he's pushing up against is not something unique to the Jewish religion or any religion. It is something fundamentally human, and that is a desire to create a sense of concreteness, a sense of certainty around identity, to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel justified within the world and within our existence. And so Nicodemus, through his interpretation of the Jewish scriptures, is grounding himself in what he understands to be his natural identity as one of the chosen people of Israel. And so for Jesus to suggest that he be born again, that anyone be born again, is to call into question that what is natural is something to be appealed to as a means of justifying oneself, of finding a sense of security in the world based on a kind of inherited or practiced identity, all right? And so in order to make that argument, Jesus appeals to this image that would have been very familiar to Nicodemus, this early creation image where the possibility of being, the possibility of creation, and our identity as image bearers of God is grounded in this chaos, in this water, in this spirit that opens us up in a sense of almost a kind of vulnerability, but opens us up into this space of possibility, all right? And so really what the point I want to make here is that almost no matter how you look at it, whether you want to, I'm not an expert in many of the secular sciences that I was alluding to, psychoanalysis aside, but whether you want to look at it through a secular sense or whether you want to look at it through a biblical sense, all of the ingredients are there for us to undermine the assumption that what is normal is good and what is natural is normal. The super nature of us as humans is there from the start. And we see this emphasized as the Genesis narrative goes on. I mean, literally, God talks about making humanity in God's image. And what that means, I think we miss. I think we imagine still this break, this dichotomy, this either-orness, this competitiveness between what it means to be human and what it means to be divine. But the biblical image gives us something far more chaotic, far more unpredictable, far messier, far blurrier. From the start, the snake didn't do that. That was there from the beginning as a feature, not a bug of what it means to be human. So rather than think of, normal is good and natural is normal, I think oftentimes it's helpful to understand a couple things. One, usually appeals to normativity and what is natural are well-intentioned attempts to create control and certainty, all right? And again, I want to emphasize the well-intentioned piece. There is something also fundamentally human about our desire to ground ourselves in control and certainty. Chaos doesn't always feel good. And as hopeful as it might sound to say that chaos and wind and the spirit and these elements that are at the beginning of creation here open us up to the possibility of what could be new and these exciting kind of creative elements born from the mind of God and instilled upon, like all that sounds kind of nice and poetic. But when I actually take a step back and think about it, like, I don't like change. I'm very, very, very routine. And so even this sort of romantic prospect of possibility, which I am saying is a good thing, there's a vulnerability to it. So I don't want to categorically demonize the impulse to create certainty, to create control. But I think the beauty of the tools and the technologies that the biblical narrative gives us is that it gives us things like faith and grace and love and hope. And these are the, you know, it might come across as a little trite because we use these words so haphazardly, but in context, these are tools and technologies that we've been instilled with to navigate the vulnerability and the uncertainty of what it means to be divinely human. And so there is a scandalous invitation. There's a scandalous invitation to embrace the possibility of what it might mean to be supernatural, to embrace the possibility of what it might mean to not, even with good intention, sort of cower behind the very constructed certainties that we sort of label as normal or natural. And I'm of the opinion, and I've long felt this way, that in many ways, the witness, I think that's a good word for it, the witness of the queer community, of the LGBTQ community, is a gift, first and foremost for folks who might identify that way at the level of gender and sexuality, but really for everyone. Because here's the secret that people don't like talking about, is that at the end of the day, no one actually fits into these definitions of what is normal. No one does. Some of us can hide within these sort of identity categories better. Some of us have been privileged to roam about a little bit more freely, but no one fits this. And so the gift of queer theory, of queer theology, of queer identity is to peel back. The biblical word for this is apocalypse. To bring an end to a certain way of being in the world, a kind of rupture. You know the cliche, I've seen it, now I can't unsee it. That is the gift of our queer siblings, that is the gift of queer theology, that is the gift of queer spirituality, is to peel back the layer, the scales falling from our eyes of what we think is normal and natural, and to be thrust, thrown, hurled, dragged, what have you, into the messy vulnerability of what is supernormal or supernatural. And it's really key, I think, at this point, that this was always meant to be done collectively and in community. A few weeks ago, I closed the service by referencing the Pentecost story and kind of walking us through the sequence of events from the crucifixion to the resurrection to Pentecost. And again, in Pentecost, which is when the Holy Spirit sort of enters the narrative in the New Testament. Again, Spirit, wind, these same elements are present. Chaos, it felt like chaos. Everyone was speaking in different languages and kind of understanding what they were saying. There was a sense of vulnerability because Jesus was gone and everyone was kind of freaking out. And it's within that chaos, within that uncertainty, that the possibility that became the church was born. And there was a mutuality and a solidarity and a celebration. So that's what we're inviting you all to do today. is to embrace the uncertainty, embrace the spontaneity, embrace also, though, the solidarity found in understanding that we are, in fact, and have been from the very beginning, more than normal, more than natural, but supernatural. That's all I have for you. 2 minutes before 11, that was my goal. Thank you for being here. I am going to go re-regulate, probably feed myself, apply some sunscreen, but I hope to see many, most, all even of you this afternoon, and if not, next week. So, thanks for being here. Be safe. See you soon. Take care.